Hello and welcome to a new episode of Cabbie Conversations. I'm joined as always by my good friend James.
Hello.
And today we're going to be talking about, well, first and foremost, since last week we did guilty pleasures, we thought we would do the reverse this week and, just really reveal how bitter and bitter and resentful we are towards everything that everyone else likes. So yeah, James, what is something that you don't like that everyone else does?
I'm gonna start off with Jaffa Cakes. I really don't like Jaffa Cakes.
What's wrong with Jaffa Cakes?
I feel like, although they are not a biscuit, they just lack all the satisfaction of a biscuit.
I know what you mean. Well, they're not really supposed to be a biscuit. They're supposed to be a cake, as they say.
They are actually a cake, so they don't have to pay tax. But I just don't know, like, they're biscuit sized. I want a nice satisfying crunch and something that feels very like it has some substance. But a Jaffa Cake, I just feel like I'm kind of chewing a piece of like library book with a bit of like orange flavoring in it, and I'm just really not amused by it.
Library book. It's disgusting. Oh god. Well, I mean, I disagree slightly. I can see where you're coming from. For me, I was struggling to think, to be honest. I thought I would have a lot to say, but to be honest, as I've gotten older, I've sort of realized, like, a lot of the stuff I like, a lot of the stuff I didn't like when I was younger, I now have come to appreciate. Like, rap music, for example, I used to despise. Because I was one of those stupid kids that was like, it's just people talking. But something I genuinely don't like is, and this isn't necessarily that controversial of opinion, but I think it's like, I really don't like film remakes, and they seem to be all the rage nowadays. To be honest, any sort of remake. You what?
Like the Disney ones.
Yeah, the Disney ones are awful. The thing is, like, the thing I have against them is that they can never really be good. Well, they can never be exceptional. They can only ever be... What?
What about the Great Gatsby? That's a remake.
I didn't... well, the original... You mean the film?
Yeah, the film. The one that came out in, what was it, 2013, 2012?
Well, technically, like, it's not really a remake because they're just adaptations of the same book. So you could say, if you want to get technical. But, I don't know. In some way, I feel like I didn't really like the newer one all that much. I think it relied way too much on CGI. Really bad looking CGI at that. Not that the first film in I think it was like 1960s. I've seen that one as well. Slow. It's very slow, but I think as one of those losers that's read the book, I feel like it does sort of encapsulate what the book is trying to say a bit better.
It's true to the book.
Yeah, and it's just a bit more grounded. I don't know. I prefer the original, but I can understand why you would prefer the other one. But again, I wouldn't necessarily say that's like a remake, because this is the thing, like, another adaptation of like the source material, that's different to a remake of a film, because they're both, how to explain this, like, you're taking something from the same source, but you could go in completely different directions with it. Like, have you seen the original animated Lord of the Rings film?
No.
I mean, I'll just say it goes in a very different direction to the Peter Jackson ones. Not necessarily in the best way, but
no, like the Jacksons. So
exactly. But the point is, like, you can go in very different directions because you're pulling from a book. So you have like more creative freedom. Whereas if you're remaking a film, essentially what you're doing is just doing the same thing again. Like what really can you make all that different? Unless you make substantial changes, which not a lot of them do. And if you are going to make substantial changes, I would say, well, why don't you just make a sequel or a different film entirely? You know?
Okay.
I understand the appeal of them because in many ways, like old films and stuff haven't aged particularly well, especially
They're much slower in the plot line.
yeah, and like I don't know if on a technical level, I suppose, like I'm trying to think of an example, but like an old film that like relies a lot on CGI, for example, and the CGI looks really dated now. I can understand how perhaps that would be desirable to go back and fix it, but you know, realistically, you could do that without refilming the whole thing. And you
So
could just
like the South Park cartoons did with the old animation, they've updated the old series
yeah.
into it.
I mean, like, yeah, I find the old style very charming still, but it wouldn't be the end of the world, I think, if they remade, say, the musical film.
Yeah.
But again,
Okay.
I just think it's pointless. Like using those resources to make something new.
Yeah.
Rather than just repeating what everyone's already seen before.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, I went on too long about that. It's your turn.
The real gripe.
Well, that's something I actually care about, so.
One of my unpopular like opinions is I don't like David Bowie.
Oh yeah, we had some arguments about this.
I don't think his singing voice is very good. I think he's a pretty bad singer.
Oh, I mean, I can understand what you say there, but I think the appeal is in the lyrics and the I don't know. He has a certain distinctive quality.
And I will say there's an exception. I really like his album Young Americans, but apart from that, I'm really not into his work. But I do appreciate that what he did for the music and creative industry has completely transformed how we now do music today. Like the creation of like a persona is now widely used in pop culture, and David Bowie trailblazed for that. So, and then also being able to cross over from music into film and all sorts, David Bowie did that. So, I do appreciate what he's done for creative culture, but at the same time, I really don't like his music.
Do you feel the same way about the Beatles?
No, I really like the Beatles.
Okay. I was wondering because they're a similar thing where a lot of people say, "Oh, I respect them," but I don't particularly like. I like David Bowie and the Beatles, but I think with music is the music is like one of the most subjective things ever. So
I guess another like unpopular opinion I have is like my favorite part of a holiday is going home.
What? What do you mean?
Like, because I enjoy going away, and I enjoy looking at all the new things, but I also find it really tiring. And I like coming home because I know that when I come home, there's going to be, like, after a while I miss, like, certain things that I do every day or have at home that I don't have somewhere else when I go abroad. So I look forward to coming home because then I have all of my, like, creature comforts, if you like, at home. So that's why it's my favourite part of coming home.
Have you never been on holiday somewhere and just thought like, wow, I just really want to stay a few more days? Does that never happen?
It has, but that's always been within the UK, so it's fine. So like, it's fine because I can get like, it's normally I want to come home because I want to digest a biscuit or I want an apple or I don't know. It's just something. It's
get
something
an apple
like,
in another country.
well, yeah, you can get like. When I travelled to Indonesia, yeah, you could get an apple, but it tasted shit, and it was just because it's not like they're not locally grown in Indonesia, and it had been shipped about 3,000 miles away from China and was wrapped up in plastic and stored in the fridge. It wasn't like a fresh, juicy apple.
I understand what you mean, actually. Yeah. It's funny how you get time off work or something, or you finish a term at uni and you're like, oh, I can't wait to go on holiday, and like, but then afterwards you almost need a break after that as well. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
after you've been on holiday, because it's can be quite tiring.
So yeah, I do it while I do enjoy going away, and I think the break is important, and it's good to also learn about other things. I do enjoy coming home.
No, I can understand
Um,
that.
yeah. Should we move
Uh,
on to the main topic?
Yeah, let's move on because we could go all day about this, and I don't want to come across too grumpy old man. So yeah, main topic for today is animal testing. Obviously, very controversial, especially I suppose in recent times. Now that we've been plagued with a deadly virus, maybe nowadays is the time where we need to rethink our standards on animal testing. What do you think, James?
Okay, so I think I don't think it's as black and white an argument as everyone sees it as for a start. And I thought I would start off by going over like just some like basic kind of like information about it, right, with regards to cosmetic use for animal testing. So that's things like makeup and like shampoos and stuff like that. Testing on that is banned in the UK, and it was banned in 2013, but it is
Right, I
still
think we can all
allowed.
get behind that.
But it's still allowed in the US and China, and yeah, I can get behind that because because cosmetics don't improve human health. Like they might make you feel good about yourself by having an altered appearance, but at the end of the day, does it increase your life expectancy or health span? No. The species of animals most commonly used in the UK is rabbit and mice, which makes about 73%, and then actually fish is the next biggest category at about 14%, and that's because they have like the species they use has see-through skin, so like you can actually see like a lot of the actions that various chemicals and stuff have on the fish. And finally, I think I just want to say that the last thing is, so if you are a lab and you want to test your animals, you have to basically go to like a committee, and there are various committees. An example is the Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, and you basically have to say how many animals you need, why you need this many, how the animals are going to be used, how you're going to reduce the risk of harm to these animals, how you're going to maintain their welfare. Also, these animals are not just often picked up from the wild or whatever. They often come through breeders, or they come through auction houses and shelters. It's not that these animals are not being plucked out of the wild, and the idea that chimpanzees are being like other primates, the main use of animals, that is really not the case. It is lower mammals, vertebrates, and very small invertebrates.
No, exactly. No, you're right. It's not black or white at all, and we definitely have a lot more restrictions on it in this country compared to somewhere like the US or elsewhere, which is a good thing. I suppose the real question though is like, in principle, is it fair to subject animals to testing when they're like not going to receive any of the benefits from it? You know, even if we do have all these regulations in place, ultimately at the end of the day, you need to. Well, I'm assuming on some level you are going to have to like subject these animals to some sort of like unknown chemical, like some form of uncomfortable treatment, basically.
So there is some, but like a lot of the time now, alternative methods are used for these tests. So computer models are becoming increasingly more successful and better and more accurate and precise at predicting the effects of different chemicals in the body. So you can use these for molecule binding efficacy. So like if a drug binds to a desired receptor well enough, you can then also use them to model carcinogenics. So how likely a chemical is to give you cancer. And then you can also use like cell lines like stem cells or hepatocells, which are like liver cells, to measure toxicity and irritant effects. So these basic tests, animals are not required to be used. And also another thing they used to be used for is purity, because basically what they do is they put, say it was like insulin or something, they put it back in the animal, and if the animal died, then it wasn't pure. But if it was pure, the animal would live, which is pretty barbaric. But you don't have to do that anymore because we have experimental techniques such as chromatography to do that as well. These things are not necessary. So the main thing that I really think that animal testing is still being used for is gene knockout studies and the studies of genetics. We're still not at a point yet where we can model that successfully in computers, and often we can't use cell lines because the impact of a gene can affect a whole organ and then a whole system, and that's on like a macro scale of the whole like organism's health, and that is why I still think you need animal testing, because gene knockouts affect the whole being, and therefore you need to test it in a whole organism.
Yeah, I agree. However, I don't know. Yeah, I suppose there's always going to be the humane argument in the sense that, like, you know, even if it's benefiting us and there's no other alternative, is it fair to experiment on these animals that don't really have a say in the matter?
So they may not be able to give their consent. One of the main reasons we use animals is because they have a shorter lifespan. So that means that we can observe them from development through their developmental stage, and then like a normal physiological stasis, and see like how different ages and processes in life affect like say a drug or something, or a gene mutation affects an organism, and this can then be replicated in humans. Also, techniques that are used in, say, animal healthcare. So like if everyone knows a super vet Noel Fitzpatrick, you know, who fixes everyone's dogs for like an extortionate price. He's on the front line of orthopedic medicine and animals, and his techniques not only benefit the animals but then can be used to benefit human healthcare. But because they don't live as long, they heal faster. We can therefore take those models and interpret them into human models.
Yeah, it's very true. And I remember, and like, this is something I've sort of thought about a lot over the years, I think. Like, just how we treat animals in general. I'm obviously not for testing cosmetic products on them. And like you say, I think we have a very sturdy amount of like regulations that prevent them just being used basically when they don't need to be used. Obviously, ideally, we'd like to have those regulations in place in the US. But obviously, there comes a point where like digital, you know, hypothetical observation in science will only get you so far. So obviously, the most recent example would be the coronavirus vaccine. I think it was a university in Australia or something that was using testing a vaccine on mice, modified mice or something. And you know, I'm trying to choose my words delicately because I don't want to come across like an asshole. But essentially, it's like, yeah, you know, a mouse has like a 2-year lifespan. They ultimately don't have any sort of consciousness in the same way we do. And that's not to say that you should kill them for no reason. you know, or torture them for no reason. But if you have enough regulations in place, and if you are sure that this is like, a necessary step you need to take. Because I remember it said that basically, if they had to skip that step, obviously that would create a lot more risks, um, you know, in terms of the whole process. So if that is the case, that it's necessary, then I would say it's more than reasonable for people to test on animals.
Definitely. I mean, the uproar if, say, would be far greater if they had decided to go straight to human trials. Even though because in human trials there are different phases. So there's a phase 1 which basically does test for toxicity and stuff in humans, and then has a very small select sample of participants. And then phase 2 and phase 3 models, they scale up the size of like the number of people who take part in the study and focus more on dosage, and then also on like if there are any side effects or people who might be more prone to side effects as they expand the study. But the first study does really focus on toxicity in humans. So, but if say all the participants died, that would be a huge But if say 10 humans died from a medical trial, there would be absolute outrage, and the scientists could be, put in prison or whatever for not getting their data accurately. But if they did kill, say, 6 mice, it wouldn't be as much of an issue, because that is currently how we view animals. I think the one thing that a lot of people have problem with animal testing is that after animals have gone through the lab and the experiments they have been completed, most animals are euthanized due to, I think, a lot of the conditions are distressing. I mean, there was a lot of outrage recently because it was 27 monkeys from NASA were all killed this year because of project. But if you actually read about it, most of them I think had I think it was either Parkinson's or leprosy. So they were quite sickly, and they were all pretty elderly. And I guess this comes into, should animals continue? But again, we kind of take a different view of animals because animals don't really understand this like pain in a way that we do. People choose to euthanize animals like you would euthanize a dog or something if it became too elderly, because we still feel it's kinder to the animal. So that's sort of the policy. It's because the animal is in distress, and if it's in distress, it can't mentally can't see why the distress is occurring.
It doesn't know it's being euthanized at the end of the day. It doesn't know that it's alive, really. Not on the same level that we do, anyway. So, yeah, you're right. They have a very different attitude to like life and death. At the end of the day, I mean, obviously, like it's shown that things like dogs and monkeys and stuff, they can feel emotion, like happiness and whatever, but they ultimately are just, their brain is only really concerned with survival and mating. You mentioned something about NASA, and maybe this is slightly off topic, but yeah, what do you think about using animals and testing for stuff like that, where it's not necessarily medical, but say like, testing with monkeys to see about pressure and like all that stuff in space, things like that? That's a different beast.
I mean, like, to be honest, I think I'm not massively pro a lot of space exploration. In regards to with the mission to repopulate humans on another planet, because I feel like we have evolved to survive on this planet. Any other planet, even if it is really, really closely accurate, like close to ours, it will not be our planet, and we'd have it because it's not our planet, we would probably not survive very well on it. So I think that to kind of use animals as a method to kind of explore that, I don't think it's really viable, because I don't think humans going to another planet to survive in another galaxy or on the other side of the galaxy is really viable either.
Well, that's fair enough. Yeah, I'm very pro, like, obviously space exploration and stuff. But I must admit, I read about those monkeys getting euthanized. It did make me very sad. And as much as I am pro space exploration, ultimately, it's not really on the same level as medical science, because I don't think it's to do with human survival. So I would disagree that, like, it would obviously be beneficial to explore the possibilities of life on other planets, Europa perhaps, as an example. But yeah, the idea that a monkey should be subjected to all this stuff. I think monkeys as well, obviously I have a bias because I'm a caveman, but they do have a sort of elevated intelligence compared to something like a mouse. So experimenting on them feels a bit wrong to me in any setting. Even though obviously it makes a lot more sense scientifically to do so, because they're have a lot more in common with us. So you probably get more accurate results from them. I remember, like, sorry, go on.
But if you are going to, I'd say, if you want to test something like pressure and things like that, you'd almost be as well off using a pig, because pigs' organs are regularly harvested, or have been in the past harvested for human use in xenotransplants. So I feel like, if anything, just use a pig.
Yeah, honestly, like, no one's gonna give a shit if a pig dies. Like, I mean, we eat them anyway, so, like, yeah, that's a good idea. I don't know, maybe there's some reason why they don't. I mean, I imagine it's mainly because of, like, space suits, the way they make them. Like,
maybe, I mean, but
they have to fit a bipedal, humanoid type shape.
I mean, when they're sending these creatures into space, is it like to test out new suits or like new ships, or
it's
what?
Basically, I think mainly it's to do with, like, testing how the suits handle the air pressure, and the or lack thereof, I should say, and just generally how a human survives in that sort of environment, or how any biological organism,
how any mammal survives in that. Okay.
Yeah. So, it's obviously a grey area, I think, but I think using monkeys specifically is a no-go for me. As cute as they look in the face outfits.
I mean, I think, well, in the past, monkeys and higher mammals have been used a lot in, like, psychological studies, and it has caused just vast amounts of trauma.
Yeah.
There was an experiment basically determining how important the role of a mother was for comfort. And so basically they had,
like this story already.
They put these baby monkeys in cages, and the cage either had like an iron monkey mum that's dispensed milk, or it had like a soft monkey mum. And the monkeys, and like some were left in a cage just with the iron monkey, some were left in a cage with like a plush monkey with like, which also dispensed milk, and some, I believe, were left in the cage with either the iron, which dispensed milk, or the soft monkey. And the monkeys always had a preference for the soft monkey, which shows that like a mother's role is not just food, and that animals do form, that animal attachment is important. But these monkeys ended up being hugely disturbed afterwards, because although it was like a plush monkey, they didn't actually receive the normal care that other monkeys would. They were very violent and disruptive and couldn't form good relationships with everyone else in the in the troop.
That's God damn it, you bummed me out.
So animal testing in the past has been really, really grisly, and I think in some areas still continues to be, where you know, where committees and stuff on boards are not as strict on animal use, which I think is what people a lot
I
of
think that's the
people
main
have.
issue people have with it. I would say most people, apart from the most avid, like, pro-animal type supporters, other than those types of people, I think most people will agree that some level of animal testing is needed. I think the main controversy, I suppose, is what animals you use, I guess, and what regulations you put on the test. And
I mean,
hopefully there'll be some, I don't know, ideally there'd be some sort of universal, like, UN style regulations that affect, the whole world on how this stuff should operate. But really, it just seems to be a few Western countries that take this approach of, not allowing just mad scientist type experimentation.
well, in different science is definitely like what is legal in some countries is really not legal in others, and it definitely pushes like the boundaries of what can happen in science. So, I guess this is like a completely different podcast, but gene modification, genetic modification in organisms. Um, that is, like I said, one of the main reasons that we use animals, and a lot of this is to test things like cancers, also see how so which would be by knocking out genes, causing a gene to be overexpressed to compare the difference, because often you because we have so many genes, we don't actually know what every gene does until we actually get rid of it, and then we go and we see what function is missing.
Yeah, no, that's interesting.
Um,
What
and
benefits to the layman, such as myself, do those types of experiments give us?
So if you can know the function of a gene, if you can identify the function of a gene, so if we were to do something like let's pick cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis basically is a disorder where you get lots of heavy mucus in your lungs, and it's because there's a mutation in the gene which basically stops the transport of chlorine and chlorine ions in cells. And that affects basically the water potential, so how much water is in the lungs. And so in cystic fibrosis patients, because the chlorine cannot transport across the cell membrane, it means that the mucus is very thick and heavy and is really difficult to cough up, or like ours would just naturally get brushed up by our cilia and swallowed. But because theirs is really thick, the cilia aren't strong enough to do that. And so they have to cough it up, and that causes damage to the lungs. If we basically identify that gene, we could basically knock it out, and then what we would see in these species is the same symptoms of those with cystic fibrosis. But if we put the gene back, if we put it in a healthy organism, we would see actually, we'd be able to compare the two very clearly.
Okay, so it is of very good medical benefit, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's not like it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like obvious. Like otherwise, it just makes often the phenotype, which is like the thing that you see, cannot be told. You cannot see it just from the genotype, which is the genetic code.
Hmm. Okay. Oh, this is going to become a very big brain podcast, even. No, yeah. So, obviously, in those circumstances, using an animal test subject is sort of the only really way to do it, or is there any sort of alternative?
So like I said, computer models are increasingly becoming a thing, but often like these computer models are based off initially lab findings, which
Yeah, it has to
create
come
the
from somewhere, doesn't it?
which comes from the initial like lab, like which we then create, because the lab studies find like the basic rules, if you like, which you can then program, and then it becomes a symbiosis until the computer is basically strong enough to do computer-based learning. But like that, but initially you do have to provide the computer with data to be able to work out the initial problems.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like, this probably won't be an issue in like a few decades. I feel technology will probably get to the point where the need for animal testing will probably be gone. Like we'll have sophisticated enough simulations to accurately predict the outcome.
No, that would be very exciting, and I think something that we can definitely hope to achieve. But I think for right now, it's not quite there.
Necessity, yeah.
Also, so people would say you can do a lot of, like I said, experiments in stem lines and stuff, set like in cell lines, and this is what we would call an in vitro experiment, which means an in test tube experiment. But the problem with in test tube experiments is that basically because these cells are preserved in like often have like a fed special mediums, are like stored in a specific way and stuff. They're not and often to keep the cells alive, it's not like they've literally got they've literally scratched a human liver and then plonked them down. They're often preserved for generations from the same like the same person to basically to make all the results the same, and so anyone can buy this source of a cell line. So if you were interested in this, there's something called HeLa cells, which came from the 50s from a woman who was dying of cancer, and they took her cancer cells, and they're still alive ever since. So she is still immortal.
Oh my god.
She's technically dead, but her cells are still alive, and they're still used in experiments to this day, even though she died in the 50s.
That's mad.
So that's it. Immortality is possible, just not in the way you want.
Oh my god. Yeah.
The problem with these in vitro experiments, like I was saying, so like if we were to even use HeLa cells, because the cells are cancerous, they're not exactly normal cells. They act differently to like cells in our body. So that means in translating it to in vivo, which means in life, and these techniques might not work because living cells, there are more variables present in the cells, and that could definitely alter the effects of the results.
Would it be possible then to do the same thing, take someone's in life cells then, like, and use them for experiments? I'll give up mine. I'll give up some of mine. I've got some spare.
You can do that, but it's more challenging, and often they like to use somebody with the same genetic source because then the genes are consistent, if that makes sense. But that's not always the case. So that is a weakness of it. But I do think, so when I was looking up some animal testing, lots of people wouldn't consider this animal testing, but actually just microchipping animals and tagging them is a form of animal testing, because you're testing where they move, where they go, what they like, and that could be like a predator in its natural habitat, and that could actually be invaluable for conservation.
Oh, absolutely. I would say, I think that's like I suppose a less invasive form of animal testing. It's more observation.
It is.
But it is still animal testing.
It is still animal testing. You still have to capture the animal, maybe tranquilize it briefly, tag, chip it, and then let it go.
Euthanize it briefly.
Euthanize it, then we shall resuscitate. No, tranquilize it. But you still have to invade the animal's, I guess, almost dignity, in order to do that.
Oh, I mean, yeah, like when you get a dog, what's the first thing you do? Like, is that not allowed? Like, it's if that isn't even more. I'm not trying to be indirect. I can't remember the word for it now. When you chop their balls off, what's it called?
Castrate.
Yeah. That is like ultimately pointless, because you only get a pet for your own personal enjoyment. Like, I mean, you could argue it's giving them a good life, I suppose, but I don't know, that to me is an even more frivolous like way of treating animals, and yet a lot of the people who castrate their pets would be against animal testing. So
I mean, lots of vets are very much for castration. They think it's.
I am too, yeah.
animal care. It is better for animal care. And in like countries where they have a lot of strays and stuff, it's because they haven't neutered their animals.
Yeah.
So neutering is actually can be a necessary part of making sure that the animals we do have are cared for properly.
Unless you're planning to breed, it's very immoral to not castrate them because, and if you're not willing to, then like you really shouldn't be allowed to have one, in my opinion, because you know that they're gonna be agitated their whole life, not gonna have any access to female or male, and like, you know, it's just not really fair on them. And like you say, you're gonna be, you might, he'll be like humping all the dogs, other dogs and stuff. Like it's not fair on him.
Or humping all your furniture, or you know, your leg.
Yeah, your leg, exactly. But ultimately, what it comes down to, I think, with this is how much you sort of value life inherently. You know, is a human life worth more than an animal? Ultimately, I guess not, but you have to, if you're looking at it objectively, then I don't know, it's self-preservation on our part ultimately. And yeah, I wish animals were treated better, and I like animals, but if it came down to me wanting humanity to not get diseases and viruses like we are dealing with right now, if that means doing some regulated, obviously, experiments on some animals, I would say that's fair game.
I mean, yeah, animals have also not only been responsible for cancer treatments, but have been responsible also for, say, the treatment of diabetes and so forth. To even to organ transplants, animal testing has been like invaluable to human health. And I feel like although yes, all life is created equally, we can say that on like a measured so let's be completely equal. But I think if we say that all life is equal and therefore we shouldn't kill animals, I think we then try and become basically plants, and we're not plants. Because we're saying that we don't want to use animals for that, but animals have been necessary for our survival for millennia. So whether it was been eating them, farming them, and then breeding animals to get like the most ideal farm animal, like the strongest horse, or the cow that produces the most milk. We've been doing this for so long, and although these animals I think if they're bred to the point of harm, like a lot of dog breeds are, I do think that's a problem. But I think if they are not, but they yet still benefit us, and we can work in a symbiosis where the animal is well cared for, and we can get what we need, then I feel like that is not of detriment to either species.
I agree. And you just reminded me of something saying that. I'm going to backtrack. Something I hate is pugs. No one should be allowed to breed pugs. They are fucking dying constantly. Their breathing is labored. They look disgusting. Get them out of here.
Do you know what? I held your agreement that I thought pugs were awful, and then I actually met two really nice pugs. And like, don't get me wrong.
Nice, but it's not fair to them. Like they're always in pain. It looks like.
It is true. They are always in pain. What's it? Sausage dogs or Dachshunds that they have chronic.
Stupider.
Boxers, English boxers, are now like basically infertile because they've been overbred to that point. I think that is something I don't like. I think you've got to. That is to me quite immoral. Bringing them to the point of their own ill health. It's like, because basically it's what we have, like the thing of you don't sleep with your cousin, you don't sleep with your brother, or like your first cousin, you don't sleep with your brother.
Yeah, with animals it's like, nah mate, let's just throw them all in.
It's fine. It's fine. They have the desired traits, but that causes lots and lots of problems. So I think that to me is that is a problem to me.
That is gross.
But yeah.
Let's end on that. Now that we're in agreement. A very scientific episode. I liked it. Thankfully, you're here because I don't know anything about science. But yeah, obviously, as usual, let us know what you think in the comments below if you agree or disagree. And yeah, thank you very much for listening, and goodbye.